Have you ever opened your refrigerator, grabbed yesterday's leftovers, heated them for a minute or two, and thought, it's been refrigerated, so it has to be safe? If you have, you're doing exactly what millions of people do every single day. But some foods become much riskier when they are cooled, stored, and reheated the wrong way. And after the age of 70, even a mild case of food poisoning can leave you dehydrated, weak, and recovering for days instead of hours. Today, we're going through the foods that deserve the most caution, along with the simple mistakes to avoid so you can enjoy your leftovers without putting your health at risk. Number 5. Fried foods. You have probably done this without thinking twice. Dinner is over, and there are a few pieces of fried chicken left in the container, a couple of French fries on the plate, or maybe some fried fish that nobody finished. Throwing them away feels wasteful, so you cover them, place them in the refrigerator, and tell yourself you'll have them tomorrow. It feels like the responsible thing to do because you are saving both food and money. The next day, you take those leftovers out, warm them in the microwave, or maybe place them in the oven or an air fryer to make them crispy again. They look perfectly normal. They smell exactly the way you remember. Nothing about them tells you to stop. In fact, you may even feel good about yourself because you are not wasting food. That is why this habit catches so many people. Everything about the meal feels responsible, practical, and safe. Yet if those leftovers spent too much time sitting on the counter before they ever reached the refrigerator, the risk started long before you pressed the reheat button. The important thing to understand is that reheating fried food is not automatically dangerous. The real problem is what happened before you reheated it. If that food sat on the kitchen counter for several hours before it was refrigerated, bacteria had plenty of time to multiply. Bacteria are tiny living organisms that you cannot see with your eyes. Some are harmless, but others can make you very sick if they grow to high enough levels in your food. The part that makes this tricky is that fried food often sits out longer than you realize. People keep reaching for one more piece, the container stays open, and by the time it is finally put away, the safe window may already be closing. Your refrigerator can slow bacteria down, but it cannot go back in time and undo the hours the food spent sitting out. That is what makes leftovers so deceptive. You cannot depend on your senses to tell you whether they are still safe. Food that causes food poisoning often looks completely normal. It does not always smell bad, change color, or taste different. Everything about it tells you it should be safe to eat, even when harmful bacteria have already had time to grow. That is why so many cases of food poisoning catch people completely by surprise. There is another reason fried foods deserve extra attention. Every time cooking oil is heated, it slowly begins to break down. Reheating the food again does not suddenly make it poisonous, but the quality continues to decline. The outside becomes greasier, the texture changes, and the flavor is never quite the same. While this is different from food poisoning, it is another reason fried leftovers are best enjoyed sooner rather than being reheated over and over again for several days. After the age of 70, recovering from food poisoning becomes much more difficult than it used to be. You lose fluids much faster through vomiting or diarrhea, and replacing those fluids is not always easy. Dehydration simply means your body does not have enough water to function properly. You may begin feeling weak, dizzy, unusually tired, or even confused. That weakness can increase your risk of falling, and for many older adults, a fall can lead to a much bigger health problem than the stomach illness itself. The good news is that you do not have to stop enjoying leftovers. You simply need to handle them safely. Once the meal is over, refrigerate fried foods within about 2 hours, or sooner if the room is especially warm. Store them in shallow containers so they cool more quickly, and when you are ready to eat them again, make sure they are steaming hot all the way through instead of only warm on the outside. If you cannot remember how many days they have been sitting in the refrigerator, it is usually much safer to throw them away than to gamble with your health. The next food on our list surprises almost everyone because you have probably been told for years that it is one of the healthiest foods you can eat. That is still true, but when it comes to leftovers, there is one mistake you should never overlook. Number 4. Leafy greens. Leafy greens probably feel like the safest food in your refrigerator. Spinach, kale, Swiss chard, collard greens, and other cooked greens are the kinds of foods you eat because you are trying to take care of yourself. So, if you cook extra with dinner and reheat the rest the next day, it does not feel risky at all. It feels healthy. You might cook spinach with garlic, steam kale, or save a serving of greens from last night's meal. The next day, you put them in the microwave while the rest of your lunch is warming up. They look the same, they smell the same. And because they are vegetables, your guard is down before you even take the first bite. The problem is not that leafy greens are bad for you. They are still full of nutrients your body needs. The problem is that cooked vegetables can still become unsafe if they sit out too long before going into the refrigerator. Once food cools down slowly at room temperature, bacteria can begin to multiply. And if enough bacteria grow before the food is chilled, reheating later does not always make the food safe again. This is where the phrase danger zone matters. It simply means the temperature range where bacteria grow quickly. You do not need to remember the exact numbers to understand the point. Warm food sitting on the counter is not hot enough to kill bacteria, but it is not cold enough to slow them down either. That middle temperature is where the risk grows. This is especially easy to miss with greens because the portion is usually small. You may leave a little bowl on the counter while cleaning up other dishes, thinking it is not enough food to worry about. But bacteria do not care about portion size. A few bites left too long can still become a problem if the food is handled carelessly. This catches people off guard because cooked greens rarely give you any warning that something has changed. They may not smell spoiled. They may not look any different from when you first made them. They may even taste exactly the same. When you are eating vegetables, your mind naturally focuses on the health benefits instead of food safety. That false sense of confidence is what makes proper storage so important. Healthy food still has to be handled safely if you want it to stay healthy. After the age of 70, food poisoning can hit harder than expected. Your body may not bounce back as quickly, especially if vomiting or diarrhea causes you to lose too much fluid. You may feel weak, lightheaded, or unsteady when you stand up. If you already have other health problems or take medications that affect your blood pressure, kidneys, or heart, that sudden fluid loss can become more serious. The safer habit is simple. Do not let cooked greens sit on the table while the evening keeps going. Put them away soon after the meal and use a shallow container so they cool faster in the refrigerator. When you reheat them, make sure they are hot all the way through, not just warm around the edges. And if you keep reheating the same container for several days, stop and portion out only what you plan to eat. Heating, cooling, and reheating the same food again and again gives bacteria more chances to grow. The next food is much more famous for causing problems, but the part that surprises people is this. Even cooking it the first time does not remove every risk. Number 3. Rice. Rice is one of the most common leftovers in any kitchen. You might cook a large pot because it saves time, or maybe you ordered takeout and have enough left for another meal. The next day, you scoop some into a bowl, press the microwave button, and a minute later, lunch is ready. It feels like one of the safest foods you could possibly reheat. What makes rice different is that the biggest mistake often happens long before you ever warm it up. Raw rice naturally contains something called Bacillus cereus. The name sounds complicated, but the idea is simple. It is a type of bacteria that produces tiny protective shells called spores. Think of those spores as a survival mode. They can survive normal cooking temperatures, even though the active bacteria are destroyed. If cooked rice sits at room temperature for too long, those spores can wake up, multiply, and begin producing toxins. Toxins are harmful substances made by bacteria, and some of them are not destroyed by reheating. That means you can microwave the rice until it is steaming hot, but if those toxins formed while the rice was sitting on the counter, the microwave cannot simply erase them. This is why so many people misunderstand the problem. The danger is not reheating the rice. The danger is assuming reheating fixes every mistake that happened before the rice went into the refrigerator. Think about your own routine. Dinner finishes, and the rice stays in the pot while everyone relaxes. Maybe you answer a phone call, watch your favorite television show, or tell yourself you'll clean the kitchen later. Before you know it, 2 or 3 hours have passed. You finally put the rice into the refrigerator and assume the problem has been solved because it is cold now. The truth is that refrigeration slows bacteria down, but it cannot reverse what already happened while the rice sat at room temperature. Rice is especially easy to overlook because you have probably reheated it hundreds of times without getting sick. That creates a false sense of confidence. You start believing that because nothing bad happened before, nothing bad will happen next time either. Unfortunately, food poisoning does not work that way. It only takes one batch that was handled improperly to leave you dealing with severe stomach cramps, vomiting, or diarrhea. After the age of 70, those symptoms can become much more serious than they sound. Losing too much fluid can leave you weak, dizzy, and unsteady on your feet. You may struggle to eat or drink enough while you recover, and what would have been a one-day illness years ago can keep you feeling exhausted for several days. In some cases, dehydration becomes serious enough that medical treatment is needed just to replace the fluids your body has lost. The safest habit is actually very simple. As soon as you finish your meal, refrigerate the leftover rice instead of leaving it on the counter. Divide it into smaller containers so it cools more quickly, and only reheat the amount you plan to eat. If there is still rice left after reheating, avoid cooling it down and warming it again the next day. Every extra heating and cooling cycle gives bacteria another opportunity to grow if the food is not handled correctly. The next food creates a completely different problem. You can look at it, touch it, and even see steam coming from it. But none of those things guarantee the inside is actually hot enough to keep you safe. Number 2. Chicken. Chicken is one of the easiest leftovers to save because it can become another meal with almost no effort. Maybe you roasted a whole chicken for Sunday dinner, grilled extra chicken breasts for the week, or picked up a bucket of fried chicken because there was enough for tomorrow. You put the leftovers into the refrigerator, and the next day you simply warm them up. It feels like a routine you have followed for years. The problem is that chicken can fool you. You take a piece out of the microwave, touch it with your fork, and it feels hot. You see steam rising from the surface, so you naturally assume the entire piece is ready to eat. The trouble is that your eyes and your fingers only tell you what is happening on the outside. They cannot tell you whether the center has become hot enough to kill harmful bacteria. Microwaves heat food differently than an oven. Instead of surrounding the food with hot air, they heat different parts at different speeds. That can leave what are called cold spots. A cold spot is simply an area inside the food that never became as hot as the rest. The outside may be almost too hot to touch, while the center is still much cooler. If bacteria found their way onto the chicken before it was stored, or if the chicken was not reheated thoroughly enough, those cooler spots may allow harmful bacteria to survive. You have probably heard of salmonella. It is one of the most common bacteria linked to chicken and a frequent cause of food poisoning. Another is Campylobacter. You do not need to remember the name. The important thing is knowing that both can cause severe stomach cramps, diarrhea, fever, and vomiting if they are not destroyed by proper cooking or reheating. One reason this catches so many people is because the mistake is almost invisible. You have probably reheated chicken dozens, maybe even hundreds of times without getting sick. That history makes it easy to believe your usual routine is always safe, but every piece of chicken is different. A thick chicken breast heats differently from sliced chicken, and a crowded plate heats differently from a single piece. That is why taking a little extra time to reheat it properly is much safer than relying on how it worked last time. After the age of 70, food poisoning can become much more than an upset stomach. Losing fluids quickly can lower your blood pressure, leave you feeling faint when you stand up, and make it difficult for your body to recover. If you already live with diabetes, heart disease, or kidney disease, even a short illness can place extra stress on your body. That is why doctors take food poisoning much more seriously in older adults than they do in younger people. The safest habit is to give the heat enough time to reach the center of the food. If you use the microwave, cut larger pieces into smaller ones, arrange them in a single layer, and pause halfway through to turn them over or move them around. Let the chicken sit for a minute after heating because the heat continues moving through the food even after the microwave stops. If you have a little more time, reheating chicken in the oven usually provides more even heating from the outside all the way to the center. The final food on this list is one almost every family has sitting on the counter after dinner. Most people never think twice about it. Yet, one very common habit can quietly turn it into one of the riskiest leftovers in your kitchen. Number 1. Potatoes. Potatoes probably seem like the least suspicious food in your kitchen. Maybe you baked a few with dinner, made a large bowl of mashed potatoes for the family, or roasted potatoes to go alongside your meal. Whatever the recipe, there are almost always leftovers. You cover them, leave them on the table while everyone finishes talking, and eventually put them away for tomorrow. It feels like a habit you have followed your entire life. The problem is not the potato itself. The problem is how long it spends sitting at room temperature before it ever reaches the refrigerator. It is surprisingly easy to lose track of time after dinner, especially during holidays or family gatherings. Everyone is talking, someone wants another cup of coffee, the grandchildren are visiting, and cleaning the kitchen becomes something you'll do later. Before you realize it, those potatoes have been sitting on the table much longer than you intended. It is such a common habit that most people never question it, yet it is exactly the kind of situation where bacteria have the opportunity to multiply before the food is finally refrigerated. Bacteria grow best when cooked food stays warm for too long. Once that happens, putting the potatoes into the refrigerator slows the bacteria down, but it does not undo the growth that already took place. The next day, reheating the potatoes may make them feel hot again, but it cannot always reverse what happened while they were left out. That is why food safety experts place so much importance on cooling leftovers promptly instead of relying on reheating to fix the problem later. Baked potatoes deserve a little extra attention because many people leave them wrapped in aluminum foil after dinner. The foil helps keep the potato warm, but it also slows the cooling process. A potato that stays warm for a long time gives bacteria more opportunity to grow before it is finally refrigerated. It is one of those small kitchen habits that feels harmless because you have probably done it for years. Yet it is exactly the kind of detail that food safety experts recommend avoiding. After the age of 70, your immune system is simply not as strong as it was when you were younger. That means your body often needs more time to fight off bacteria that may have entered through contaminated food. If food poisoning develops, vomiting and diarrhea can quickly lead to dehydration, leaving you weak, dizzy, and exhausted. You may find it difficult to keep food or water down, and even walking across the room can feel tiring. For some older adults, what begins as food poisoning ends with a trip to the emergency room because their body loses too much fluid too quickly. The good news is that potatoes are easy to enjoy safely with just a few simple habits. Refrigerate them within about 2 hours after cooking instead of leaving them on the counter for the rest of the evening. If they are wrapped in foil, remove the foil before storing them so they cool more quickly. Store leftovers in shallow containers, and when you are ready to eat them again, heat them until they are steaming hot all the way through. Most importantly, trust the calendar more than your memory. If you are not sure how long those leftovers have been sitting in the refrigerator, it is much safer to throw them away than to take the chance. Now we want to hear from you. Which of these foods surprised you the most, and have you ever gotten sick after eating leftovers? Tell us in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you found this helpful, please give this video a like and subscribe so you never miss what we cover next. Thanks for watching.